The key was not in the lock. It was not in the tin box under the bed, or on the nail beside the stove, or in any place a daughter would have known to look. It was sewn into the cuff of her father's Sunday coat. Ruth Merrick found it 3 hours after she buried him, when the November light had gone flat over the Nebraska grass and the grave dirt had already begun to crust in the cold. She had not cried at the grave, not because she was hard, because the wind was hard. The ground was hard, the work was hard, and grief had no use until the chores were finished. She had dug the grave herself at the west edge of the claim, below a bur oak that leaned over the dry wash. Her father had liked that place because the land dipped there just enough to gather shade in summer. He used to sit on the lowest root with his hat pulled down and watch the cattle trails fade into the evening. She wrapped him in the red wool blanket from the foot of his bed. Not the good one. The good one had been sold in September. She lowered him with a rope, filled the grave with both hands shaking, then walked back to the cabin while the first hard grains of sleet ticked against the dead grass. Inside, everything still belonged to him. His cup sat beside the stove. His pipe lay on the windowsill. His boots were turned toward the door, as if he had only stepped outside, and would be irritated to find them moved. Ruth took his coat from the peg, because it smelled too much like him. That was when she felt it, a small weight near the left cuff, not in the pocket. Inside the seam. She worked the stitches loose with the tip of her knife. A flat black iron key dropped into her palm, no longer than her thumb. Dark from years of hidden sweat. There was a strip of leather tied through its bow. On the leather, in her father's tight hand, were 3 words. For the North. Ruth stood in the center of the cabin and looked toward the narrow strip of low ground beyond the corn stubble, where the spring draw lay behind a fence of crooked cedar posts. Her father had locked that draw 6 years before. He had built a gate from wagon iron, driven the posts steep, and told her one sentence when she asked why. A wet place can be ruined faster than a dry one. That was all. She had been 17 then, still young enough to believe every unfinished answer would eventually be finished. Now he was in the ground. The key was in her hand. And the north draw, the one piece of land that stayed green longer than anything else on the claim, was still locked. Ruth put the key in a cracked saucer beside the stove. Then she moved it to the windowsill. Then she moved it back again. By midnight she had tied it around her neck under her dress. Not because she meant to use it, but because she could not bear the thought of leaving it where another hand might find it first. The first winter alone teaches a person the difference between quiet and silence. Quiet is a room after work. Silence is a room with one set of breathing missing. By December, Ruth had learned to count everything. Cordwood by armload, flour by cup, coffee by pinch, kerosene by the inch left in the jug, hay by the forkful, because the mare would carry her to town if the road opened, and without the mare, 12 miles became the same as no miles at all. She kept a pencil tally on the inside wall beside the stove. Not pretty marks. Necessary ones. For sacks of cornmeal became 3. 3 pounds of salt pork became 1. The last jar of peaches, put up by her mother before the fever took her, remained untouched through Christmas, because some hunger is easier than opening the last sweet thing in a house. On the 2nd week of January, the man who held the note rode up from the south. His name was Amos Vale. He owned 6 sections of grass, 2 hired men, a painted barn, and the kind of horse that made poverty look louder by standing near it. He took his hat off before he spoke. Men like that usually did. Courtesy cost nothing, and it made taking more respectable. He said he was sorry about her father. He said Isaac Merrick had been stubborn, but honest. Then he looked past her shoulder toward the north fence. Not at the cabin, not at the barn, not at the half-collapsed chicken shed. At the north. Ruth noticed. Vale told her the note came due on July 10th. $42.80, principal and interest. Her father had borrowed in the drought year, when the corn had curled up in July, and the cow had gone dry in August. A fair note, Vale said. A manageable note, if a person was realistic. Ruth said nothing. He smiled as if patience were a gift he had brought her. Then he said the north draw might settle the matter cleanly. 2.5 acres of low ground, spring seep at the back, useless to a woman without a herd, but useful to a man whose cattle needed water. He said he could take it off her hands and call the account paid. Take it off her hands. As if land were a bucket. As if her father's locked fence were an inconvenience. Ruth kept her hands folded in front of her apron, so he would not see her thumb pressing against the key beneath the cloth. She told him she understood the date. He mounted, turned the bay horse, and rode away with the calm of a man who believed July was already his. When the sound of his horse faded, Ruth went inside and opened the tin box under the bed. There was no money in it. There were receipts, a broken watch chain, her mother's wedding ribbon, and the loan paper folded with a strip of rawhide. $42.80. Ruth read it until the numbers stopped looking like ink and started looking like weather. You could bargain with weather. You could not pretend it was not coming. January turned into February without improving. The prairie went colorless. The sky lowered. The mare grew narrow through the ribs no matter how carefully Ruth divided the hay. The locked key stayed against her skin. Some nights she took it out and laid it on the table beside the lamp. Some nights she put it back without touching the cord. She did not open the north draw, not yet, because snow had filled the path to the gate, and because she was afraid of finding nothing. A locked place can keep hope alive simply by remaining locked. In late February, while the wind worried at the roof shingles, Ruth pulled her mother's old midwife ledger from the bottom of the flower chest. It was not a proper book, more a stitched stack of paper with remedies, births, names, and notes in 2 different hands. Her mother's hand was round and careful. Her father's was cramped, as if every word had cost him. Ruth turned pages by lamplight. Willow bark for fever. Horehound syrup for cough. Yarrow packed in clean cloth. Then, halfway through the ledger, between a note about a stillborn calf and a recipe for liniment, she found a line she had never seen. North beds must not be pulled before the 3rd hard summer. Below it, in her father's hand, cone root, licorice, keep damp, keep hidden until there is need. Until there is need. Ruth did not move for a long time. The lamp hissed. The roof groaned. The key lay on the table like a question finally tired of being polite. By the last week of March, the thaw came reluctantly. Not warmth, not kindness, just softening. The wagon ruts loosened by noon. Snow withdrew from the fence shadows. The spring seat behind the north draw began to speak under the grass. A small hidden sound like cloth being torn very slowly. Ruth waited one more morning. She told herself she was checking the posts. She took wire, pliers, and a hammer so the lie would have tools. The north gate had not changed. Wagon iron, cedar posts, a simple iron lock darkened by weather. Her father's work everywhere in it. Not beautiful, firm. Ruth stood before it with the key in her hand. She expected resistance. The lock opened at the first turn. The gate gave inward with a long dry complaint from the hinge. Inside, the draw was not wild, that was the first shock. It was not grass and weeds and neglect, it was order disguised as roughness. Beds ran in curved rows along the low ground, following the wettest part of the soil. Old stalks stood brittle and gray from the previous year, cut low and clean. Small crowns of new growth pushed through the dark mud in clusters that did not happen by accident. Near the back, where the spring seep glazed the earth, pale runners crossed under the leaf rot. Ruth stepped over the threshold as if entering a church after everyone had left. She knelt and touched the soil. Black, cool, alive. The rest of the claim was tired brown loam that broke into dust when summer came too early. But this little draw held water under its skin. Her father had known that. He had not wasted it on pasture. He had planted something. He had tended it. and he had hidden it so well that even she had mistaken patience for secrecy. On the inside post, tied beneath a strip of tin to keep it dry, was a packet wrapped in oilcloth. Ruth opened it with care. Inside were 3 pages from the ledger, torn clean and folded twice. Not instructions exactly. A map, rows marked in pencil, year marks beside them, route divisions, drying notes, buyer's weights copied from somewhere. One name circled in the margin. Mrs. Adler, above the millinery, Kearney. Ruth read the pages twice. Then she locked the gate again. Not because she was afraid anymore, because now there was something worth protecting. April brought green to the low places and men with advice to town. Advice came easily from men who were not hungry. The storekeeper advised Ruth to sell before Vale got impatient. The clerk at the land office advised her not to make a hard man harder. A ranch hand with beer on his breath advised her that women had no luck holding claims alone. Ruth listened to all of them the way she listened to flies in summer. On the first clear Tuesday, she rode to Kearney with a dried stalk wrapped in flour cloth and the last of her coins sewn into her hem. Mrs. Adler did live above the millinery. She was smaller than Ruth expected, with silver hair pinned tight, and hands stained faintly yellow from things she had handled for a long time. Her room smelled of dried leaves, camphor, wax, and rain that had been trapped in wood. Ruth laid the stalk on the table without explaining where it came from. Mrs. Adler picked it up. She rolled the stem between 2 fingers, broke the root end, and held it near her nose. Her expression changed only slightly. That slight change was enough. Purple coneflower, she said. Good root if it was dug clean. Better if the crown is old. And this runner here. She touched the pale fiber caught near the joint. Wild licorice. Prairie stock. Ruth kept her face still. Mrs. Adler named prices. Not promises. Not fantasies, prices. Good dried coneflower root could bring 80 cents a pound from the right buyer if it was clean and not overheated. Licorice root less, but steady, seed heads, if kept dry, could be sold in smaller lots to growers and medicine men who wanted plain stock rather than weak Eastern garden seed. The numbers moved through Ruth slowly. 8 pounds meant one thing. 50 pounds meant another. A full draw, harvested carefully and not stripped dead, meant something she had not allowed herself to imagine since the funeral. Mrs. Adler looked at her and said, "There are men in Omaha who buy poorer root by the wagon load and call it medicine." Ruth folded the stalk back into the cloth. She asked how root should be washed. Mrs. Adler smiled then, not kindly, sharply. As if she had been waiting for the first useful question. By May, the North Draw had become Ruth's true calendar. The corn could fail. The beans could be slow. The mare could go lame for 2 days and recover on the 3rd. But behind the locked gate, the coneflower thickened, and the licorice sent green leaves along the damp edge, and the low ground held a promise that had weight. Ruth worked it at dawn and dusk, never in the full open light. She weeded with a table knife, divided crowns with a short spade, marked strong plants with red thread, left weak ones alone. Every action had to answer a question. Would this help September? Would this kill next year? Would this save the land without spending the seed of the land? That was the hardest lesson. Need makes a person greedy. Survival makes greed sound reasonable. But her father's pages were clear. Do not strip the beds bare. Root that feeds you once can ruin you, if you forget it is still alive. On June 20th, Amos Vale came again. This time, he did not begin with condolences. He rode in near supper with dust on his coat and a folded paper in his glove. The note was due in 20 days, he said. He would accept the North Draw in settlement. He would even allow her to keep a narrow wagon path to the back fence, which he described as generous. Ruth was standing by the chopping block with wood dust on her skirt. She had a blister across her palm from the spade. Under her sleeve, her wrist smelled faintly of damp root. She told him she would pay in September. Vale laughed once, not loud, worse, small. He said September was not July. Ruth said no, it was not. Then she asked for 90 days. He looked at her, then, the way men look when a thing they meant to lift turns out to have roots. "What have you got back there?" he asked. Ruth did not look toward the north fence. "Wet ground," she said. He watched her for a long moment, the kind of look meant to make silence confess. But Ruth had learned silence from Winter, and Winter had been a better teacher than Amos Vale. At last he said, "September 15th, full amount. No second extension." He made her write it on the back of the note in her own hand. She wrote carefully, not because she trusted him, because she trusted paper more when she had touched the ink herself. July opened hot. The coneflower bloomed with rough purple heads that made the draw look almost ornamental from a distance. Ruth did not let herself admire them for long. Beauty was not the crop. The root was. She began with the marked crowns along the east row, lifting only what Mrs. Adler had told her could be taken. One plant left, one divided, one cut, one spared. The work was slower than hunger wanted. Roots came up twisted, mud-caked, alive with a smell that was bitter, sweet, and strangely clean. She washed them in spring water, sliced the thickest pieces lengthwise, and laid them on screens made from feed sackcloth and willow frames. The cabin changed smell by the second week. Smoke, lamp oil, drying root, sun-warmed burlap. Her father's absence was still there, but it had to share the room now. By August, every rafter held bundles. Licorice roots hung in braided lengths. Coneflower root dried in pale strips. Seed heads sat on trays Ruth turned twice a day, guarding them from damp with the intensity other women might give to silver. She slept badly, not from fear alone, from arithmetic. 26 pounds dry, 32, 41, then more, as the late cuts finished curing. She kept 2 ledgers now, one for debt, one for life. On the last Friday of August, Mrs. Adler rode out in a rented wagon. She did not compliment the cabin. She did not mention the grave. She did not ask to see the lock draw until she had inspected the dried stock first. That alone told Ruth something. A sentimental person looks at the secret. A buyer looks at the proof. Mrs. Adler broke pieces, weighed handfuls, smelled the cuts, rejected 3 small bundles for mold, praised none of them aloud. At last she said, "You did not overheat it." Ruth said no. "You did not strip the crowns." "No." "You sorted the licorice separate." "Yes." Mrs. Adler looked toward the north gate. "Then you may have more than a payment here," she said. "You may have a business." The word business felt too large for the cabin. Larger than grief, larger than debt, larger than the fence Vale wanted. Mrs. Adler wrote to Omaha that afternoon from Ruth's own table. She used Ruth's ink and sealed the letter with a bit of wax warmed over the stove. She would not tell Ruth exactly what she wrote. Only this: "When Mr. Bell comes, let him name the first number. Then do not answer it." That was the entire lesson in commerce. Let him name it. Do not answer. September came dry and yellow. The train brought Mr. Bell on a Wednesday, and a hired buggy brought him to the claim before noon. He was not a large man, but he had the stillness of someone who had spent years watching other people reveal the price of their own fear. He wore city boots, unsuitable for the yard, and carried a leather case with brass corners. Ruth met him at the gate with her sleeves rolled down and her hair pinned tight. The north key hung beneath her collar. Not hidden now, just not displayed. Mr. Bell said Mrs. Adler had written about unusually clean Plains root. Ruth said Mrs. Adler did not exaggerate. That made him smile. A small smile, quickly gone. She took him first to the cabin, not the draw. The dried stock was stacked in crates along the unfinished wall, each lined with cloth, labeled by date, weight, and plant. Ruth had built the crates from broken fence boards and sanded the inside smooth so splinters would not catch the root. Mr. Bell examined one crate, then another, then his pace changed. He had expected need, he had not expected order. That was Ruth's first advantage. She let him see all of it before she opened the north gate. When the lock turned and the draws spread out before him, the second advantage appeared. Not the harvested beds, the unharvested ones. Rows left standing, crowns marked for next year. Seed heads drying on stalks. Licorice still running in the damp soil where a careless seller would have torn it up for one desperate check. Mr. Bell walked the rows without speaking. He crouched once, pressed 2 fingers into the soil, and looked at the moisture shining black under the surface. Then he stood and named a figure. Ruth remembered Mrs. Adler. She did not answer. Wind moved through the dry grass along the outside fence. Mr. Bell adjusted his gloves and named another. Ruth looked past him at the bur oak near her father's grave. He asked what number she had in mind. She told him. It was more than the dead, more than seed for spring, more than the mare's feed through winter. It was also less than the draw was worth. That mattered. A greedy number would have made this a rescue. A working number made it a contract. Mr. Bell closed his leather case and said he would pay half on loading, half on arrival and inspection in Omaha. Ruth said no. Cash before the crates left the yard. He looked at her with irritation first. Then, slowly, with respect you would not have offered if she had asked for it. He said he could return in 3 days with bank draft papers. Ruth said cash. He came back in 3 days with cash. On September 14th, Ruth rode to town with the money sewn inside her bodice and the note folded in her glove. Amos Vale was at the land office when she arrived. That was not chance. Men who expect surrender often arrange to witness it. He stood near the clerk's desk with one boot on the rail, speaking as if the room already belonged to him. Ruth put the money on the counter. $42.80. Then she added the recording fee in exact coin and asked the clerk to mark the note satisfied. The clerk looked at the money, then at Vale, then back at Ruth. Vale said nothing. For the first time since January, he had no sentence prepared. The clerk stamped the paper. Paid. It was a small sound. It changed the size of the room. Ruth took the canceled note, folded it once, and placed it in the same tin box that had held her father's debt. That afternoon she filed the Homestead continuance, bought 2 sacks of flour, a packet of coffee, lamp oil, and 3 lengths of wire. Not because wire was romantic. Because a future requires fences that hold. The money did not make Ruth rich. That is not what saved her. A one-time windfall can disappear through cracks a person never sees until it is gone. What saved her was that the north draw could answer again. The next spring, she opened the gate before sunrise and worked with the key hanging outside her dress. She divided crowns into the empty places, set licorice runners along the wet edge, wrote to Mrs. Adler for better screens, ordered glass jars, labels, and a hand scale. By the 3rd season, Ruth was shipping clean root twice a year. By the 5th, Mr. Bell no longer came to inspect every crate. He sent orders. By the 7th, the claim had new shingles, the mare had a younger horse beside her, and the north draw had become what her father had tried to leave behind without having the words to explain it. Not a secret, a system. Amos Vale never asked about the north draw again. The town did. Small towns hate an unanswered question almost as much as they hate being wrong. They said Ruth must have found gold. They said her father had hidden cash. They said a city man had taken an interest in her, which was the kind of story people invent when they cannot imagine a woman making money from dirt unless a man is standing somewhere behind it. Ruth corrected none of them. Correction is expensive when silence is free. Mrs. Adler died 2 winters later, in a room above the millinery that still smelled of dried leaves. She left Ruth a bundle of old buyer lists, tied with blue thread and one note. You asked the right questions. Ruth kept that note inside her mother's ledger. Years passed. The bur oak widened. The cabin gained another room. The north fence was rebuilt twice, then left open during workdays because there was no longer a need to hide what had already proved itself. One September morning, Ruth walked to the gate before first light. The iron key was still on its leather cord, dark from her skin, smooth at the edges from years of use. She held it in her palm for a moment. Then she hung it on a nail inside the gatepost. Not in the cabin, not under cloth, not against her heart. At the threshold, where a key belongs, when the fear has passed and the work remains. The sun had not cleared the grass yet. The draw smelled of damp soil, drying seed, and the bitter clean root that had carried her through the year everyone else had already counted as lost. Ruth stepped into the rows. Behind her, the key swung once in the morning air and came to rest against the cedar post. Her father had not left her treasure. He had left her a door. And she had learned how to keep opening it.